For everyone that just got here, use the text chat to ask questions to Paul. Share any resources, comments, anything that comes to mind. If you're facing any challenges or fears related to building a career or business, feel free to share that too. Even if you don't have a way to ask a question, you're not sure how to formulate a question, share what you're dealing with. And we'll do our best to get you some help from Paul. And with that said, Paul, please introduce yourself to everyone.
Sure. Hi, I'm Paul Shrater. I have probably about a dozen or so businesses, and you can read them at either minimusbrands.biz or my name, paulschrater.com, which is Shrater. So they both kind of list most of the things I'm working on, but not all of them. And go back 22 years in e-commerce, which then led to doing contract packaging for other brands in food, supplements, beauty, personal care. So that's a factory here in Southern California that actually makes all that stuff or packages it all in all kinds of different formats. And that led into also, since we were doing fulfillment for our own e-commerce business, direct to consumer and wholesale, doing it for these other brands too. And then also just getting fulfillment clients that we weren't manufacturing for, high profile celebrities and such. So we're doing, food, beauty, apparel, toys, like all kinds of stuff in fulfillment from a warehouse here in Southern California. We also have one in Ohio. We have a food service distribution company. I have a TikTok marketing agency partnered with an agency from China that was brought over by TikTok corporate a couple of years ago. So we have some live selling studios in my building and work with brand clients, talent clients on TikTok Shop, and also on the entertainment side of TikTok. And then now doing a venture studio called Butterpie Venture Studio, where it's taking a lot of that infrastructure and leveraging that in order to support high profile celebrities and creators who want to be entrepreneurs, especially in CPG and in like physical consumer goods, and being able to be their operational business partner, and also fund some of that launch cost. And they're busy doing what they do and being creative and all that, and they understand their audience, and so we can sort of get out of the gate with an initial audience to then go beyond that. But the cool thing is I work with food scientists and chemists and material scientists and inventors, so I can bring innovation to the category that they're passionate about. So they're not just white labeling and selling to fans and dying off as like a hobby business, but they're actually able to do something that could scale and be the $100 million plus type of brand that we see from some of the celebrities in recent years. So that's sort of a unique engine of infrastructure and buildings and staff and experience and all that we have to leverage into that space, which is just now emerging. Because you see, if anybody who has kids, they see them learning about product, not from TV commercials, from Saturday morning cartoons like back in my day, but from TikTokers and YouTubers and all that. So anyway, I'll stop there. But I see Gary getting all excited over there.
Yeah, I love it. I want you to also bring up your fun fact of sending condiments to space. What can you share that?
Oh yeah, I'll try and make the story really quick. So from our e-commerce business, it's everything miniature. So travel size toiletries, single serving food items. It's become less of a focus in recent years because Amazon's become Amazon, but we kind of predated their rise. And in early days, it was over 20 years ago, on our online e-commerce site, we had NASA ordering condiment packets like ketchup, mustard, hot sauce, barbecue sauce packets and things. And we were out of a product, and our customer service person came in like, NASA's on the line. And, I tried to offer a substitute and they said no, because they'd already tested it in their food lab. I was like, let me get on the call. And I told them they can work with our wholesale department. Don't order online. We can kind of handhold them through stuff. And we got the brand to overnight a case of their packets, to the NASA. And then we've shipped, cheese and hummus and like other stuff into space. And then one day the head of the NASA lab called me and said, hey, we have a challenge. Is one of our astronauts wants fruitcake for the holidays, but it cannot have rum in it because we're a government agency and we can't have alcohol. But they used rum to preserve it. And at the time, it was going over on Russian supply rockets and needed to be preserved for like a standard 2 years. And so, can I help them? And I said, challenge accepted. And I called every fruitcake manufacturer in the US, and they all use rum to preserve their fruitcakes. And so I went global and found an abbey of monks in the United Kingdom who, for like 400 years, in their commercial bakery, had been making fruitcake without rum, but it's preserved. And so they shipped those over. Passed the food lab, went up to space. Astronaut loved it, emailed the monks from space. They got all excited, and I got them permission to talk about it with the NASA PR team. And then 2 years later, the astronaut went up again and requested his fruitcake, and now the monks charged me. But so yeah, I shipped fruitcake into space twice.
I love it. I love it. I wanted to share that too because like this whole journey, whether you're building a career or a business, you never know where it's going to lead you and who you're going to interact with. And my interactions with you, I've known you for a long time now. You've been one of our like longest standing mentors in the community for like 10 years now. And you always come with this amazing energy that's so positive and so kind and always looking to help other people. And yeah, it might not lead you somewhere immediately, but eventually it opens doors to incredible opportunities, whether that's, business or career or just as a person, just something really exciting and fun to like
Yeah.
engage in. So yeah, I wanted to share that, have you share that with everyone in the community. So there's a bunch of people that have joined us now across the different, platforms and here on and Start Mata, we're hosting this. So again, everyone that's just joining us, if you're not on Start Mata, post your questions in the chat. I will copy them. I will share them with Paul. We will read them and then get them answered. And also, if you're dealing with anything that's scary about building a career or business, a challenge, and you don't know how to ask the question, just share that and we'll figure it out. We'll help you. Hey, thanks. Thanks. I had compliments on my nails. Yeah, I'm a big fan. I'm a big fan of cotton candy colors or going all cosmos. So next time I'm gonna go more to like Nebula Cosmo theme. This time it was pure cotton candy. But thank you so much. So yeah, so while we're waiting for some questions, because everyone's being very shy, I see someone typing in Discord. That's good. So we'll get to you in just a moment once you post something. But in the meantime, there's just like a million things you touched on, Paul, that were so interesting to jump off on. But one of the things that you've been helping me as a personal mentor with for a while now is understanding how to contextualize what stage you're at with your product and your business and not get ahead of yourself, not try to do something that you're not equipped for yet in terms of resources, influence with the relationships you have, your own skill set, right? Your experience, all these things. How do you, when you're building your own company, what's your methodology for really taking an account of where you are right now today, where you want the vision to be in like, 10 years, maybe faster if possible, but what needs to happen immediately, like right now and tomorrow? How do you manage that?
Yeah, there's a sales rep friend of mine who has some great advice. He calls it salami tactics. Just do one slice at a time, and rather than try and do everything all at once, because it's very hard to do, and also harder for people to understand if you're trying to dump everything on them, all at once with this, massive vision or massive to-do list or whatever. And it's, try to look at it in bite-sized pieces. I also have tried over the years to look at it. People say look one step ahead, and I always think about it as look at it as 1.5 steps ahead, because that one step ahead is like, what are you doing next? What are the different paths? If you make this choice, it's going to do this. If you make this choice, it's going to do that. Like you look at those immediate cause and effects, but then if you look at that next half step, like what do I need to pay attention to now that effect is going to have? And is that like building, the size of your building and space I need to be, looking at the market and just tracking that, not necessarily actively, but I should put in a phone call to my commercial real estate agent and say, hey, just keep an eye on things in the neighborhood that might be subleases or whatever, because I'm thinking that half step ahead. So you can plant seeds also, as I call it, for things too that may take a while to germinate into something, while you're working on something else. So I also, as part of that, like, what seeds can I plant now that may take a while, as opposed to planting those seeds later and then have needing time for that to germinate with whatever that is that you're working on. Are there some low hanging fruit kind of things where you can plant those seeds now, get things working that you don't have to be doing yourself, that will then come to the table while you've been working on something else, and now you've done sort of two things at once.
I like that a lot in terms also of planting those seeds in preparation for what you're trying to accomplish, not, in the immediate to get to that next milestone, but to
Mhm.
get to like that third, fourth, sixth milestone that you're aware of. And also it's going to require a lot more to get there, right? Like this comes up often with fundraising. A lot of founders wait until they need money to start seeking out, investors to get the money. That's not the way to do it. It's not like, well, it is a way, but it's not the wisest, most beneficial way. The most, effective way is doing what you're talking about, planting those seeds early on, where you're finding these investors and you're reaching out to them, not to pitch them, but to build relationships with them, approach them as mentors, ask them for advice, for feedback, for insights that they are very experienced in, with a lot of interest in as well, because they have a passion for this, area that they focus on. And you could even reach out to them and be like, hey, I really admire you and love, like, what you've done with your career. It's incredible. I'm working on, this company, and it would be possible to like buy you a coffee and spend 20 minutes with you to just get like some feedback on our pitch deck. I don't know if I'm doing this right. I don't know if we're speaking the right things, right? So something like that, which is a little bit heavy asking, like, just asking them to a quick call, but it's still, again, planting those seeds for a relationship. And there, again, there's so many different relationships you can build. In your like experience, I know I'm a big community person, relationship person. How do you start planting seeds for relationships and cultivating not just like, a typical transactional relationship, but something that's authentic and organic and is closer to a friendship than just like this, I'm going to use you, you're going to use me for our own, like professional success.
Yeah, I think you actually do a great job on that with things like this, and the meetups that you do and all that, and the process that you do is you have people talk about what are they doing, so people know who they are and what their skill sets are, how they can help other people and what they need help on, and similarly, if you always approach things as not just one sided, but what can you do to help the other person, and and genuinely, and then that tends to be a good way to approach it. It may not be somebody where you're like, not everybody you meet is going to be a friend in terms of someone you're going out drinking with weekly or whatever. Like they're not, they can be a friendly, business acquaintance kind of thing where you're a friend with them, and you catch up and you talk about what you're working on, and you see how different ways you can help each other, and you're not like with a specific agenda of like, I need this person to do X, and therefore I'm just going to throw it out there to see how I can help them. No, it's like genuinely like on an ongoing basis of this mindset of like, you know how can I be helping other people, and also people should ask, because a lot of people love to help and love to be in this mindset of connecting people, and may not even be their own time and advice. It may just be like, oh, I got a guy that can help you with your thing, and it's a win-win that you put together for the other people, and then nothing may ever come from that. Or maybe 6 months down the road, the person's like, oh, I just met somebody who might be able to use your services, and all of a sudden they send you a client or something out of the blue, and you're like, you may not even remember that guy. You just like met him once and put him in touch with somebody. So just having that mindset, without like looking for a one-to-one transactional relationship, but that mindset sort of karmically comes back to you.
I love that. I love that
I
so
see
much.
different questions coming in.
Yeah, I know. We got a couple more. I'm going to come back to something about the how to ask for, advice or ask questions or ask for favors and support. But we do have some questions. So we're going to jump to Solomon's question. I need some help. I'm basically into motion graphics design, and I'm trying to target SaaS and fintech products and service-based businesses. But I want to learn from people doing it. like I want to learn from my customer's point of view. What's your recommendation for someone like Solomon who wants to get an insider look into a type of business they want to service or even create, right? And yeah, what would your advice be to get close with those people and start to learn from them directly?
I've become AI first in my brain, to at least check in there to give you guidance. It is unbelievable the brain trust that it's pulling from the web. It doesn't get everything right all the time. It doesn't capture certain things, but it's a great starting point. And so I would go to something. I said I'm a big Claude AI fan right now, CLAUDE.ai. You can get a few queries on a free account, or you pay a $20 a month for their basic to get a little bit more. But I would ask to explain it. You write a big prompt, explain, what it is you're doing, where you think you have a differentiation than others out there, what you're trying to accomplish, and if it's about marketing to certain people, say, hey, I want to, market to these, categories. I want to focus on them. I want to understand, what to say to them or how to reach them. Like, just ask it, but give it as much framing and detail as possible. And then even in your prompt, say, and ask me any questions that you need from me in order to better give me an answer. And then it will even ask you some questions, only if you tell it to really, better understand, because you may not have captured everything in that query that you're putting into it. And that is a great way to get, to get some of that at least initial feedback. And it may even suggest, or you could say like, hey, if I just want to meet some people as mentors to better understand it, where should I go? You could even ask it to look at your LinkedIn. Who do I know already that I should be talking to? And it may remind you of somebody by just looking at your LinkedIn. So there's a lot of cool ways to use AI as if you were talking to a genius or an assistant or what, So.
How do you leverage that AI research to then convert it to the real world where you're sitting down with these people and engaging with them and, finding that opportunity to see firsthand like what their workflows are, might be like, in this certain task in their business or the role of a person in a business or bigger picture, like, it could be the overarching, like, uh, multitude of systems that are all interconnected from like the top level of the business operations that you want to serve.
Yeah, and I think it's, every situation's unique. So in this question that Solomon's asking, it may come back and say, oh, if you're trying to target fintech people, there's the Fintech Software Association, and you should become a member, and you should, post a question to their chat group, or you should go to this Reddit forum where all those people sit and talk to each other, and you'll get engaged in that conversation. And you'll be like, oh my gosh, I didn't even realize those things existed. And so now it's given you some of those pathways to execute it. And once it does, you can even say, okay, now strategically, you can ask it again, how do I do that? Give me a roadmap for engaging. And so like, I try not to stop with just the initial thing it tells you to do, but then dig deeper and say, now what, now what, now what, so that's how I would use it to dig in. My answer has changed. A year ago, this didn't really exist in this way to do this. And so it would have been a different approach. But again, I think with the advent of the power of AI tools that get better and better every day, every week, it's gotten to the point where it's become really powerful to build marketing and sales strategies, documents and things. You could even say, give me a 90-day plan, or, it'll map out what you should do each day. And so if you think of, you could even, if you didn't even think of the idea of a 90-day plan, you could say, what strategies should I be doing to help me, with marketing in my business, doing blah, blah, blah. And it might suggest, oh, you should do a 90-day plan. Okay, do a 90-day plan for me.
I like this though that you mentioned associations, because that too is like something people overlook are these organizations that like aggregate all these people that are potentially your target customers or strategic partners. And the organization itself might be the strategic partner that you could reach out to get these insider information or the relationship connections or promotion for what your product is for who it's serving as well. And the other thing too, like I see people often, like I saw a comment earlier about using Reddit to find people, right, that are grouped together and like, like around this certain thing. But the problem with using a community, whether it's Discord, Reddit, Twitter, something else like that, is it's so robotic, and you're so disconnected from the human experience of, I'm talking to a real person versus, going to an association with real people that you're
Yeah.
talking to on the phone and you're able to meet with possibly like over coffee or something like that. And that goes back to like planting those seeds and building those relationships for the long haul. Um, so yeah, I think this is really great advice and really helpful to help, yeah,
Well,
Solomon. Yeah,
and to your point, pick up the phone, set up a Zoom. If there's an association, it's not just like reaching out in an email. You might, and let's say they're, like I had this morning where there was an association I want to work with, and they're like, oh, you can join as a member for $5,000. I'm like, it's a startup we're doing, and doesn't have the budget for that. So I asked the rep, I said, hey, is there anybody that you have who's a member within your organization that would be great for me to work with given what we're doing? And they're like, yeah, here's, go to our site, look at all the vendors, see which ones you might want to get an introduction to. And I'm happy to make an introduction from the association. And I was like, awesome. So I actually went to Claude and I said, look at, this list of hundreds of people, tell me which are the right ones. And it's like, don't ask for 20 introductions, ask for 4. Here's the ones we think and why. And then I actually challenged it when it gave its reasoning, because I thought some of its reasoning was off. It agreed with my challenge, and then refined it to say, here's the 4. And then I said, can you draft an email for the association to send to each of those 4 people so I can make their life easier if they want it. And then I took that and I sent it off to the association.
I
The
love
person
that.
I was
I
talking
love that.
to.
So yeah, hopefully Solomon, that helps, especially your follow-up question talking about how Reddit, they ban you easily, and Discord also has restrictions because all these communities, they're online. Communities are being overrun.
Yeah,
One that,
and I'm not
yeah,
saying go there to advertise, because you're correct.
yeah,
There's a lot of chatter right now. Don't use AI bots to try to seed Reddit or whatever for your SEO. Like you'll that it doesn't work. I meant go on there and actually authentically join the chats as you, a human, and engage with people, ask questions, get to ask for advice in those groups. Get to meet some of those people in that space. Um, there's a lot of places out there like that, and there's an online chat group that has tens of thousands of CPG brand owners and service providers. And I know of a big consultant in that space who lives on this app like all day long. And it's become like a guru that, people in their app like know his name now. And he gets a lot of business from just answering people's questions for free and giving free advice, free connections, hey, you should talk to so and so, whatever. And so then all of a sudden, when someone needs his consulting services, he's built a reputation and they go to the guy. So that kind of authenticity of really participating, in that community, or if you needed something like that, getting in that community, you'll start to spot those people who can help you.
yeah, I love that because what you're doing there is demonstrating you're a resource, right?
Yeah.
You're not only a resource, but you're an expert. You know what you're talking about. And you're also, again, you're giving first, not to be transactional, but with the understanding you're making an investment over time that exactly you're building a brand that people can trust, that they know you know what you're talking about. And when it comes to those more heavy lifts that require, someone to be paid, then they're going to be willing to do that. And so, yeah, taking that approach, if you are going to go the online approach to these communities, that's brilliant. That's the way to do it. I do want to like, again, like just recommend for everyone that is trying to do it online to not blast people and be aware that most people are very skeptical that you're going to be a bot, you're another scammer, another spammer. They're getting bombarded every day by those people, and you need to do what you can to separate yourself from them. And what you just described for interacting in the communities is the way to do it. But I also love that you said just pick up the phone. Just pick up the phone, because that's like one of the easiest ways to, at least for now. I know there's some AI crap going around, but for now, it's an easy way to differentiate yourself as a real person, especially the way you engage with them and talk with them, to build that camaraderie, that endearment, to wanting to spend time with you and figure out, yeah, can I help this person? Can I give them some advice? can I do a favor for them? So this is all wonderful advice. Let's jump to Ray's question. So Ray Caldwell asks, do you have any contacts with wholesale coffee roasters, looking specifically for ones in the Southwest, Southeast, and Eastern seaboard of the US? Now, I will add a addendum to this question. If you don't, or even if you do, what's your best recommendation to seek those people out and find them, in addition to answering Ray's question?
AI, like literally, and you could use Claude for that, or Gemini, which is the one that Google owns. So, it's obviously tied into Google. There is a company that has some of the best tasting coffee I've ever had. And I'm trying to pull up, they were bought out. It used to be, it's like Volcanic Red. It's, let me look. I'll look it up for you. They're in Southern California. Yeah, it's Bixby, Bixby, BixbyCoffee.com. They bought a company that I worked with years ago. That was amazing. I don't know what they're doing now, if they offer it wholesale or private label or whatever, but they were super amazing tasting. But again, AI can find you a bazillion coffee roasters, or go to the Coffee Roasters Association and find them. There's also a website for that called the Thompson Guide, THOMP, or it's not Thomas Guide, Thomas. Yeah, thinking of the Thompson Map Guide from the day. ThomasNet, which is THOMASNET.com. They are the industrial yellow pages to look up any company. So yeah, THOMASNET.com. Again, stuff like this, little mini search engines or whatever with it, or curated things. AIs now can destroy stuff like this, but the ThomasNet used to be, in the old days, literally massive books that people would have on their shelves in manufacturing and industry to look up any vendor, and then it went digital with the internet. But you could type in coffee roaster in there, and you'll find people. But that's a good resource. Oh, you put it on the
I
thing.
made a note of it. It is a great resource. I'm sharing links in the chats. Awesome. So hopefully that helps you, Ray. Okay, so Jambo now asks, hi, my name is Moataz Hassan. I'm building an adverse media screening platform to help businesses screen their third-party vendors, suppliers, and customers. However, I'm having a really hard time testing the platform with users who have third-party screening experience. Is there a way for me to find potential beta testers? I've reached out to my former work colleagues, but none of them actually tried it out. So there's a theme we're encountering here, Paul. And so, yeah, the first part of that question is absolutely, follow the same advice that Paul's already given in terms of using AI to discover possible channels for where these people are, associations, other, list of, companies that exist in your area, your region, whatever it is, right? But there is an important question here that I think would be helpful to focus on, which is a little unique. How do you get beta testers to beta test your product? What's your way of incentivizing them or empowering them to help you learn and grow through their experiences and their opinions or thoughts?
Yeah. So if it's something you think is going to be valuable to them directly, then you could offer some, free trial period or discount for being a beta tester, or permanently or something. You can, post in your LinkedIn, ask for people that way, put the ask in there, the link, especially if it's easy for them to click and sign up to be a beta tester kind of thing. Don't make it hard. Don't make them have to email you and then you email them. Anything that feels like it's more than one step, people just I don't have time for that. The other thing is go to where your customers are eventually going to be and see if you can get some beta testers from there. Again, whether it's an association or some other, magazine or something within that world, or a Reddit forum that might be where those customers talk and chat and ask in a place like that. So, but to your point, Gary, it's helpful to have some sort of incentive rather than just asking for help, to be like, oh, and if you're a beta tester, I'm grandfathering you in, as a free account for life, you know, or whatever your offer is that you can afford to do.
I love that. Yeah. And also, having these conversations with people will help you discover what incentives you can leverage to, again, lean into who they are, what they value, what they're seeking and looking for. And, like something that I do often when I need someone's time, and everyone's time's valuable, right? Because we only have the same amount of time in every day, and we don't know how much time we're going to have on this earth, right? So you want to show respect to that and value to that. And one of the things I do often is barter. I know what my abilities are and skills and what I can bring to someone. And if they need that, I'll be willing to be like, hey, look, if you can help me beta test this for, 5 hours and work through this with me, I'll give you 5 hours of my time helping with, doing a photo shoot if you need a photo shoot done or something like that, right? So don't disregard the value that you bring individually outside of the company that you can leverage too, if you want to do like straight up like trades like that. But yeah, wonderful advice, Paul. We're gonna go to let me go to Tony's question from Twitch. So Tony L asks, or Tony L 007 asks, what is the best way to use your time? What should we study? What books do you read? What do you look to for guidance? Yeah, what makes you tick, Paul?
um, it depends on what it is you're doing, because that's such a broad question. In terms of use your time as a business owner, as someone who's looking to launch a business, is looking to grow their business. It depends on, and what industry are you in, and but in general, uh, I I would say talking to people, just a lot of people, and asking questions and explaining what you're doing. Just trying to get like information coming at you from different things. There may be newsletters you're subscribed to, or flipping through LinkedIn or your Facebook if you're older. So trying to just get lots of different inputs from different things to understand advice or your market. And, I, for a while, I was watching a lot of Gary Vaynerchuk keynote, speeches, because they are very, not only motivational, but tactical in advice of what's happening right now with, marketing and business and positioning and so there's some things like that, books, for me, I generally don't have time to sit and read, business books and things. There's one, it's at my house, I like, that was I can't remember the author now. It's called like The Big Book or something, that big like orange book, like this thick, and it's one of the big, I think it's not Ray Dalio, or like one of those famous like business guys, and it's like his online blog, and like every like page or 2 pages is a new blog. He just took all of his blog entries, put them in a book. But it was really cool because it was just like little snippets, a little advice of things about your, how to improve your business, and things you can do. So it's little bite-sized, pieces. But in a weird way, you can even have AI, and we keep going back to that, give you training for something you're interested in. So you could go to AI and be like, I really want to learn in depth about this such and such category, what's happening right now in this, or something in my industry, whatever. Write me a 50-page or more, document that gets me up to speed on, this, and like whatever it is you want to learn and know, it can now synthesize and pull from the web and build you something. You can even say, and post, once a day, a page, or get, write it for me to read a page a day, or whatever it is that you want to do. You can build it however you want to do it. So, but I would just say consuming different things, whether it's YouTube or TikTok. Sometimes the algorithms are helpful for that too. Like a TikTok algorithm, if you're searching for certain categories, it will then start feeding you more of those videos and more of the people who are thought leaders like in that space. And so the algorithm will find things that already have been proven out there by others that they like it and have find value in it, and feed that to you too. So sometimes letting an algorithm help you with that for social media as a tool can be helpful.
Yeah, I love too, again, like the idea of using these as aggregators, right? Because they're
Yeah.
they're they're showing you here's a bunch of these things, but then looking at the sources. And this is kind of like what I do when I was learning how to build ecosystems, like communities. I was looking at all these different research reports and essays, and then I was looking at the sources that they were pulling from to cite all these like, like data and metrics and, best practices and stuff. And then I follow that up and look at those sources and start reading through those sources, right? And so you find this chain of knowledge that goes back to all these different incredible, like, sources to explore and also contrast, right? Because what's interesting in business, and, we can talk about this in a moment, but, and this is like, a human experience as well. It's unique. It's unique to you. It's unique to your team. It's unique to your company, the industry, the
Mhm.
market, all these things. And it's up to you to establish the correct context for what you're operating within, but also what you're trying to accomplish within that larger landscape, given again your expertise, your experience, your skill set, your resources, the relationships you have, the influence you have of those relationships, and so forth. And so it's really important to do some of those like, like contrasts and start practicing the critical thinking to try to evaluate what's most sensible for the context you're operating within, that nuance. So this kind of like touches a little bit on like one of the earlier questions and kind of on uh actually a couple of these things. So when you're trying to assess, what to do with your time or what to focus on with priorities and everything for a business or something like that, how do you define the context? What factors play into the context that, as you're establishing the context?
Can you just reframe that a little bit? It's a
Yeah,
little
yeah, yeah,
broad. I don't think where
yeah.
you're at.
So let's, again, you're trying to, let's say, figure out what customers to focus on,
Hmm.
right? And you're an early stage company. You only have so much time to focus on chasing customers versus working on product or service or managing your team because you're a small team. You only have so much resources. You only have so much, expertise and understanding at this point.
Hmm.
When you're trying to establish that context that you're operating within and then connect that to, a group of people to seek out as your customers, how do you establish that context? What factors come into play the most where you're like, okay, this is something that matters the most. This is really like, something, this is a factor that has the most impact on what's going on currently today. And I need to be aware of that. So how do you kind of like work through that, process of establishing the context around your actions, your strategies, your plans, and the outside forces
Yeah.
that you're, relying on?
How to be a successful entrepreneur is your question. um, I mean, some of it is instinct, some of it is experience or experience plus instinct. Um, and that instinct is formed, from experiences. But the again, I've used AI for this. I said I'll keep doing it, and but it's not just saying how do I find customers. Like you can't just ask it that. I mean, you want to write a really in-depth thing to be like, here's what I'm doing. Here's the budget I'm looking at. Here's the staff resources and time I have to dedicate. Here's their skill sets that they have. And of the different people in my team, like literally spell all that out. Here's what I'm trying to achieve, in getting customers. I want to look at anything and everything as the ways, to do that from short, medium, long term. I want to look at low hanging fruits. I want, and try to think through everything that is that you would want to ask if you were talking like to a mentor to guide you on this. Put it into a prompt as conversational as you want it to be. It will understand you. And so by putting all that in and then saying, now give me, that marketing or marketing and sales plan, um, it will give you, and then you can even say, and ask me some questions if you need to better understand, my business and my goals. And then it may ask you some questions to help refine it for things you didn't think about or missed. And then it'll go ahead and proceed to build your action plan. Then you can ask some follow-ups, or it may even ask you, hey, do you want me to dive deeper on, this particular thing that seems like, good for you? But you could say, hey, tell me more about this thing, you talk about here, or how do I execute on that? So AI has given you the brain trust, again, synthesized and normalized and averaged and all that from the web. But for somebody who doesn't necessarily have mentors or people that they can talk to immediately, on a regular basis like that, which is also, used to be the advice and the way to do it, this becomes a great way to grab a lot of that knowledge. And or if you're an anti-AI person, then you hate a lot of the stuff I'm saying, but it's a reality and people are using it globally in mass. And it is forcing things to improve, like technologies for cooling and all that. So it will, just like electric cars, you got to go through some inefficiencies to get to the eventual benefits of it. So yeah, that would be how I would approach that. One of the other big things is also just to be honest with yourself about things, what you're good at, what you're not good at, what you need help on, where you need the most help. And even, whether that's in an AI prompt and you're assessing that in there, or whether it's just, looking at where you do need help and not assuming that you know the answer. A lot of people are like, oh yeah, I'm going to build a business. I'll put it on Amazon and I'll get customers because it's a great product. You have a great product, stick it on Amazon. If people aren't typing in search terms and you're not showing up, no one's going to find you. And you'll sit there with zero sales. That's a misunderstanding of how the world works, because the person has just never done it. And I've seen that happen multiple times with that exact example. And then they're like scratching their head going, how come I don't have customers? And they just spent, a bunch of their own personal money and quit their job to go do this and thought it's magic to get customers. It is very, very hard to get customers. Very hard. Not easy. You either have to have a bunch of money, something that is like, massively like in the press and people are talking about, because it's so innovative. You can have something that's innovative, but you can't even get anybody to pay attention to it's being innovative. Very hard to get customers, especially these days, as a lot of the tools to get them have become highly saturated. There are still some that, having creators that can create content that, gets picked up by algorithms, that gets attention. That's a way to do it. TikTok Shop is a big underpriced, place where you can do it yourself or get an agency like mine to help you, where that the algorithm will then do the work for you and start getting you your customers. But it takes a few months for the algorithm to understand your customers. So that's another challenge for people, is to understand you're going to spend time and money grinding it out for like 3 months with like almost zero, if not zero sales, before it trains you train the algorithm on who your customer is, to then know where to service your content to the right person, the right subset of people who are likely to buy your product.
No, yeah. Again, you're touching on a lot of interesting things that we can jump into further, but we do have a question from Nomad Daypack. How do you meet the right people when you're trying to raise funding? I'm asking from the perspective of first-time founder. So yeah, like again, so to kind of again add a little bit more to this, you have a company, it's doing a very specific thing, it's got a mission, it's got a value statement, it has, a culture that it wants to establish and represent. How do you connect that to the right people, not only to your business, but again, also to yourself in terms of your needs and what kind of business you have and all that?
So the first question I would ask is, why are you raising funding? What do you need it for? Sometimes people just think they have to raise money because that's what they think everybody does. You don't necessarily have to. Or you may find, like, if you're like, oh, I needed to pay a programmer. Okay, why not just make a programmer your equity partner in your business? Now you don't have to raise money. They just do the work. And instead of giving up the equity to an investor, you're giving it up to a programmer. So and it's way easier to find a partner like that than it is to go raise money to pay somebody. So that's what I would say is, figure out like, why are you raising money, and are there alternate solutions to raising it by having whatever you're raising it for be an equity. Maybe it's sales and marketing. Okay, what if you have a marketing firm be your equity partner? Maybe they would do something, if they like your idea so much. So figuring out why you're raising money, what are you using the money for? Is it to pay yourself because you need money to live off of? Then you can't find a partner for that necessarily. That, first I would say ask that question and really understand, and are there alternative methods to fundraising? Because fundraising is, I'll say, near impossible. It's not just easy where you're like, oh yeah, you go out there and you raise money and you talk to people or whatever. It is really, really hard. I'm involved in it right now with a venture doing, and the I would say the best thing is to also understand like who's the most likely person to invest in what you're doing. Is it, and how much are you raising? Are you raising $100,000 and you need an angel investor? So go to some angel investor forums, get involved in some competitions, pitch festivals, schmooze groups that have angel investors in them. There's a lot of those kind of groups and things around. You're raising millions of dollars for a startup, where do you find, those people, and are you really investable? It's another sort of, sanity check for yourself is this really an investable business? Do I have the right team, the right experience, the right, concept that is an investable concept? Again, AI can also help you analyze a lot of this stuff too. Assuming you have all those pieces, then it's, what category are you in? Software? Are you, what kind of software are you in? Are you in consumer goods? Are you in a service business? And there's certain investors that invest in certain categories. So then finding who those are. Some of them, you can cold outreach. You can look on your LinkedIn. Do I know somebody who knows somebody at that company that can make an introduction for me? Should I be attending some events where these types of people are on speaking panels and I can catch them at the coffee counter and chat them up about what I'm doing and see if they're interested? So putting yourself in the places where these people are is one way. The other is to find the people who already do that and, see if they can help you with what you're doing. There's some challenges to that because there's some laws against paying somebody for bringing you investors that you can't do. So you cannot pay somebody directly for that. You can pay somebody as a general consultant, regardless of whether they raise money for you, help you make introductions for you or not. But it cannot be directly tied to that activity. So they would have to be somebody who's also going to be advising you about other things in your business, and you have a pay structure that's not tied to like a percentage of what you're raising. I'm not an attorney. Please consult an attorney for formal advice on fundraising and SEC laws. But from my amateur knowledge, those are the things you need to pay attention to.
Yeah, very, very helpful insights and suggestion. Always consult with the lawyer, and you should probably be doing that most aspects of what you're doing with your business, just to ensure that you're aware of the different regulations and laws. You're not violating anything. You're not setting yourself up for not just failure, but catastrophic material consequences.
Yeah.
Could include jail, any sorts of things like that. So really good advice, and focusing on who to reach out to. So hang on, looking at new questions coming in.
And by the way, AI
Yeah.
again is a place that can help you with that. Like, here's what I'm looking to do. What laws do I need to pay attention to? You can ask that question. I have a business where it's in a regulatory environment for homeopathics. And so we actually worked with a homeopathic attorney, FDA like specialist, and built a whole do's and don'ts things of what we can and can't say, the specific phrasing and all that. I've now built that into my Claude project. So any website edits or documents or marketing materials we create run through that checker, that compliance checker, to make sure that everything being done is in compliance.
We got a good question from Tim. That's a follow-up to this one. Are there any personality red flags of investors that first-time founders should be aware of? Well, I'm sure that you got a list.
Yeah, I would say the first thing that comes to mind is you have to have the right balance of that kind of go-getter attitude without ego. If that makes sense. Investors don't like people who've come off like they know it all and they're arrogant and as if like all you're going to do is give them money and then they've got it from there and like they're just using you for your money. Like there's a sense a lot of people have, and operators or founders, have that they've got that arrogance, which is misplaced, especially because a lot of times they don't have the experience to back it up. And even if they did, that's a turn off to people. But at the same time, you don't want to be so sheepish, that an investor is going to be like, this person doesn't have the alligator skin or the toughness to go through the hard times and make the hard decisions and all, that it takes to be somebody who to launch and build and grow a business. So you need, I think having a good balance like that and portraying that balance of like, you've got the ambition, you've got the motivation, the energy, but you're also somebody who collaborates and listens and, so having that kind of balance, I would say would be um, the biggest thing, and the ability to not just fake it till you make it or BS your way through a conversation. To be like, oh yeah, that's a great point. I hadn't thought about that, or something I'm working on. You know, I'm going to take a note of that, and you come on your phone, take a note. I'm going to work on that and make sure I build that. Like actually taking something as advice and a piece of learning as opposed to feeling like you need to have all the answers, because you don't. Nobody does. I don't have all the answers.
Yeah, absolutely. I love this because it's going to feed into another question I had earlier about, again, when you do reach out to people. But I'm also curious, and also, again, with Tim's, point, on the flip side, as you being the founder right now of fundraising, what red flags are you looking for?
Oh yeah, so it misread the question.
Don't
Yeah, it
worry.
says personal red flags of investors. Um, yeah, there's a lot of investors that are predatory, that are going to want to screw you over, and be super aggressive. So finding investors that um, are not that way and trying to figure that out, um, is something to pay attention to, because a lot of the professional investor community has that as their MO. Even sometimes when they say that's not who they are, that is who they are. Um, but so having the right kind of investor um, is helpful, and someone who actually is excited by what you're doing because of the content of what you're doing and not just the financials of what you're doing. So if they're really excited by you and what you're doing, they can still be predatory and want to screw you over, but that's at least something to pay attention to. If they're like, show me your finances and show me your projections and where's your ask, and they're not as interested in really getting to know you and your business and all that, they're looking for a value deal that they can, grind you on and then, try to make a buck, or you're a lottery ticket for them, but they get enough of these lottery tickets and one hits, especially if they've gotten super aggressive on their terms. So, um, yeah, sometimes you can't help but do that, but understand what it is you're getting involved with. Yeah, I would say just paying attention to what are their goals, what are they trying to get out of it, how do they look at investments.
I love that. And I think that's expert advice in terms of, again, like it's a long-term relationship that you're entering into this person, and you want to make sure that it's going to be an enjoyable working arrangement, and spending time with them when you have to. It's not going to be contentious, it's not going to be toxic. It's going to be enjoyable for both of you. um yeah, Tim had a follow-up, like in terms of like, I think you answered it because he was in the process of writing it, but the follow-up was, how do you know they are predatory? Any overt clues? But kind of like what you touched on is just they're hyper fixated on the transactional nature of this, deal, and that's all they care about. And I think you're right. If that's the only thing that they care about, they're not taking time to, assess you as a person, your team, the founders, and what you're trying to accomplish with this business, what its, mission is,
Yeah.
values and stuff. By all means, like that feels like the biggest, kind of subtlety that's not going to be advert. Everything advert would be like just how they treat you, like openly, right?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, you could see if there's a way to talk to people they've invested in. Also the person you're talking to is not necessarily the final decision maker. If you're talking to a firm versus an angel investor, and again, motivations are different with different people. A lot of angel investors, may be less predatory if they're looking, because they're excited about what you're doing, and they're sort of taking a flyer on something fun and interesting, if that's like the situation. So understanding why the person is looking to invest, and do they have an MO? Do some research online. Like, what do people say about this firm? That people may say, oh my God, these guys are so predatory. So do some searches. That'll help tell you too, like what's their reputation, in the industry. I was on a call with somebody, and their reputation, a VC, and their reputation was clear when you did an internet search about how they were. Although you could kind of tell from the phone call, or the Zoom. But yeah, so yeah, do some homework on it. You
Yeah,
should be able to find.
Yeah, Kristen mentioned a little bit of this too during her office hour is, and in line with, looking for, testimonials or what people are saying. Go through their portfolio companies and talk to them directly. Send them a message, find the founders. Don't be shy. Like you can find email addresses, and if not, you can find them on
Yeah.
LinkedIn. Like, yeah,
Some of the challenges is you might not get honest answers because they may still be relying on those investors, and they're not going to openly badmouth them when they're their investor. They may even be legally bound not to do that. So some of that could be challenging. I'd go look more like for some online stories, or even people, if you start to find some of the people in the investment community that you've started to get to know, or that have befriended you or offered to help you out. Hey, what's the reputation of these guys? Or do you know anybody in your network that can find out what their reputation is? Um,
that's that.
so
Yeah, that's good add on to that. Okay, so we got a question from Ghost. We're coming up with time. Do you have time?
yeah, yeah.
Okay, all right. So Ghost asks, I'm trying to assess what markets to focus on and then build a product or service for them. I heard from someone that old ones and older people focus on medicine, younger people focus on games, women of all ages focus on beauty. How would I recognize these traits in people and build a product service for them? Mm.
That's a giant question. I don't know that's the right way to approach it. To say what age group I should focus on, and then what should be my product to service them. Um, I would start by saying who are you, and what is your experience, and what is your knowledge base, and what excites you, or what ideas have you seen, what needs do you see from the world that you're in. If you're coming out of college, and you know all about what's happening with people in your age group, you're going to have or people in your age group with specific, you played a sport or something, or you did, you were in a certain club, and you see a need from this world that you were in, that's a fairly, niche or unique world. And you're like, there's a cool product idea I have for something, or I wish I could solve this need in that world that you know about. Or you're a business person and you've been around the block, and you're like, I wish there was a tool that could teach me all this AI stuff Paul's talking about. Like, okay, what's out there to do that? Or should I have a consulting company that does that? And should I learn everything there is to know about that and offer that up to businesses to be their guy to come in and teach their team what they need to know? Like, so figuring out like who you are and what your knowledge base is, and what problems you've seen that you could try and tackle, and then search to see if someone's already done that. Or if they've done it, maybe they've done it in kind of not such a great way, and you have a way that is like way better, that is worth investing time and money into. But but you're going to be spending a lot of time and energy day and night living and breathing a business. So you want it to be something that's not just cobbled together, but actually comes from some element of passion of something you've seen.
Yeah, that right there, I think, is the most invaluable advice any entrepreneur, early stage, founder can get is start with what you know best, what you already have inroads with, insight with, relationships with. And we can talk about this real quick. So everything that I've done as an entrepreneur has been an extension of my passions, my interests, or my complaints. Like I became a professional photographer because I love my passion for photography. I started managing a band because I was around my friends taking photos of them and I loved them and I was helping them and they needed help and I had the skill set to do that and I just started doing it. My first startup was a mix between an online magazine and social network because I was sick of DeviantArt and MySpace and magazines focusing on the most trash, superficial nonsense instead of educating me and giving me something to be inspired by and learn from, right? And you, Paul, your background is a film writer, right? And your venture right now that you're working on is helping people create content and products, right? And so it's just like this beautiful thing where both of us with our ventures get to experience those passions that we have and help other people experience those same passions. And we know who we're talking to and who we're after because we are them, right? So I think that's just so invaluable and brilliant to get out there and yeah, Ghost, do some inner, dives into who you are, what you love, what your frustrations are, and start making the world better through addressing those things and sharing those things, those passions, or making those frustrations go away.
So I saw a question that's on there, and then I got to get going. But I'll answer this one. I'll summarize the questions. You don't have to read the whole thing. But they're basically saying they've set up a company. They have multiple products they want to do, where a couple of products may even be in somewhat similar but really quite different categories. And they have an investor that may be interested in one but not the other. How do they structure that? How do they look at equity when they have a situation like that? My off the cuff advice, again, I'm not an attorney, consult professional legal advice. Use your company as your vehicle to invest in the businesses that you then create for those other things. So let's say you have like a holding company or a parent company. That one, you could have investors that invest in that so they get a piece of everything. But if that company owns a piece of two businesses, one is your crypto business, one's your security, business. Both of those are, independent business entities. Now your parent company can own equity in each of those. And now you can raise money independently, either for your parent company, for people that want both, or for these other individual businesses. Or you can decide not to raise money for that parent company, keep that as sort of your personal buffer entity, as they're often called. And then if someone wants to invest in both, they do it independently and invest in both independently. That buffer concept is one. So it's not you personally ever on a contract with other people. You have an entity in between you. It's your entity that is the one investing. So that way, in litigation, people can sue anybody, but sometimes having a buffer entity in between can be helpful. Again, an attorney can advise you on how to do this, why to do this, pros, cons, etc., tax, implications. Again, and usually regular attorneys cannot advise you on tax things. You have to talk to a tax attorney. But getting some professional advice on business structuring for a case like this would be the way that I would do it. So finding a good small or mid-sized law firm, and one that is experienced in stuff like this and could then be your law firm to work with. A lot of law firms will spend, a phone call with you, giving you some free advice as sort of marketing, on the idea that if you like that free advice and it works for you, you then hire them on to be your attorney for future things. So yeah, that would be my advice. There is very hard to have someone invest in a thing within inside your company. It can be done, but very difficult, because then where are the costs? And then they could argue that you put the cost in their business, but really was a cost for your other product. And so that becomes very difficult, a lot cleaner to have it be separate and physical entities.
Okay, Paul, thank you for that incredible final answer with awesome advice and feedback. Um, Before we go, do you have any final thoughts, announcements to share, anything you'd like to leave the community with?
I don't know who's on here, but I'm always happy to help and give advice and stuff. Really enjoy. Gary just does an amazing job of connecting people. Love to support what Gary does across the board on things. So definitely. Don't be afraid to ask Gary, hey, do you know anybody who can do, I bet Gary knows somebody, or he knows somebody who knows somebody. So leaning on resources, and even as thin as they may be, hey, I was the guy who chatted on the thing, remember me, Gary? Can you introduce me to somebody who can do both? I'm sure Gary will do it. So don't be afraid to ask for help on stuff. And yeah and I said Gary, and the community building he does is fantastic.
It's supposed to be about you, but I thank you so much for the wonderful, glowing praise, man. Like, yeah, you're one of my favorite people. So thank you for your generous time going over 15 minutes almost now, to help people in the communities. And yeah, I'll see you soon. And thank you so much. Thank you everyone for being bold and asking wonderful questions. And yeah, we got more office hours every week, so come hang out with us again and catch you later. See you, Paul. Thank you so much, man.
Bye.
All right, bye-bye.